Recently, we discovered fossils of the ancient winged terror from Mongolia, a colossal pterosaur with a massive wingspan of 32 feet. This creature was the size of a small aircraft, towering as tall as a large bull giraffe when standing on the ground. There's even a chance that this was the largest flying animal to ever exist. It lived around 70 million years ago in a warm, dry habitat filled with dinosaurs. This predator was stalking its prey on the ground. Baby dinosaurs might have been its favorite meal. We don't have a name for this Mongolian fossil yet, but it's a groundbreaking discovery as the first pterosaur of its size found in this part of the world. And it wasn't the only terrifying pterosaur. 70 million years ago, the Earth looked very different from today. Imagine a world where the continents weren't in their current positions, but instead were grouped together in different ways. There was no Atlantic Ocean yet, it was just forming. Soon, South America is going to split apart from Africa, and India will become its own separate island. It was the final days of the Mesozoic era. This period was divided into Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. The land was covered with shallow oceans and seas with a lot of islands across North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Parts of what is now the United States were underwater, between the Rocky Mountains and the Appalachians and Ozarks. If we were to look specifically at Virginia during this time, we would find it submerged under a shallow sea, part of the early Atlantic Ocean. The climate was surprisingly mild. The oceans and the planet in general were warmer and ice-free at the poles. First, flowering plants started to appear, which was great news for insects like ants, bees, and butterflies. And of course, it was a time when huge animals, including our favorite dinosaurs, roamed the land, ruled the seas, and dominated the skies. But it wasn't just dinosaurs. Many new species of animals were appearing. Among them was the giant Quetzalcoatlus. Imagine a massive, flying reptile with wings as wide as a fighter jet. It was named after an Aztec deity, but let's call it Quetz for short. Quetz lived alongside dinosaurs, but were not dinosaurs themselves. It belonged to a family of majestic flying creatures, azhdarchid. These amazing beasts were named after a dragon in Uzbek mythology. It's not hard to see why. Living in the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 65 million years ago, Quetz and its kin ruled the skies. They had little competition from non-flying dinosaurs and fewer birds than we see today. They had special adaptations to stay light for flight, with bones filled with hollows and pits to reduce weight. And they weren't just airborne, they were skilled walkers too. They were strutting around like storks on the ground. But there was another, lesser-known giant called Hatzegopteryx. Let's call it Hatz. This beast was discovered in Romania in the 70s. It's a hidden gem compared to the more famous Quetz. Most of them had wingspans over 40 feet. That's as big as a school bus. To give you an idea, today's largest flying animal, the wandering albatross, only has a 12 feet wingspan. Hatz called Hattag Island home. This place was like a paradise for these pterosaurs, rich in forests, rivers, and diverse wildlife, including dwarf dinosaurs. With few predators and plenty of resources, Hatz grew to immense proportions. It had a powerful jaw, a strong neck, and a sturdy body, making it a formidable predator. It might have even gone after dinosaurs. Surprisingly, despite its hefty build, Hatz could fly. Maybe not long distances, but likely used its wings to explore the island. Movies often make dinosaurs seem scarier than they were in real life, but one dinosaur was actually more terrifying in reality than on screen. One of them was Dilophosaurus. You might remember it as a small venom-spitting dinosaur that played a minor role in Jurassic Park, but in reality, it was known as one of the kings of the Jurassic era. It lived about 180 million years ago, a bit earlier than the pterosaurs were mentioned. It faced tough conditions, with extreme seasons and large deserts. The first fossils of this monster were found in the 40s in northern Arizona, but they were mixed up with another dinosaur called Megalosaurus. Years later, a new fossil was found in the same area, and it had something special: 2 crests on its head. This meant it wasn't a megalosaurus after all, so it got a new name, Dilophosaurus, meaning two-crested lizard. Contrary to what Jurassic Park showed, the real Dilophosaurus didn't have a frill around its neck. Instead, it had 2 big crests on its head, probably used for showing off or finding mates. This Dilophosaurus wasn't small. It wasn't as big as some later dinosaurs, but still huge, about the size of a large car. It weighed around 880 pounds, similar to a brown bear. It was the biggest land animal in North America during its time. Dilophosaurus was fierce. Its jaws were full of sharp teeth, perfect for hunting, either fish or land animals. It likely preyed on large animals, including other dinosaurs. Its arms were strong and had sharp claws, making it the top predator of its time, ruling over the entire North America. Late Jurassic North America was a tough place to live in general, especially in the western United States. The dry seasons were harsh, and only the biggest dinosaurs could survive there. It was like a land of giants. But size wasn't the only thing that mattered. There were smaller dinosaurs that could hold their own. One of them is Ceratosaurus. It made a huge fuss when it was discovered in 1883. While fossils of this nature are hard to find, its unique features make it easy to recognize. Plus, the fossils were almost complete, which helped us to describe them quickly. It had a face that could scare anyone. Rows of sharp teeth, bony bumps over its eyes, and its most iconic feature, a horn on the nose, which was probably used for display or fighting. This horn earned Ceratosaurus its name. Our early reconstructions were wrong about its size and posture, though. Ceratosaurus was a medium-sized predator, but some individuals could grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over 2,000 pounds, like a hefty bison. Despite its smaller size compared to other dinosaurs, it didn't lag behind. It had strong legs for running and small but grasping arms. Ceratosaurus likely hunted a variety of prey, including other dinosaurs and possibly fish and smaller animals near water sources. Sadly, the reign of these majestic creatures came to an abrupt end around 66 million years ago. For a long time, we believed it was because of an asteroid impact. But our new computer simulations show that the main culprit might have been volcanoes. Volcanic eruptions spewed gas-filled lava for about 1 million years. This gradually caused the changes in temperature and carbon levels in Earth's atmosphere. The Earth became darker and more toxic. Surprisingly, the asteroid strike that formed the Chicxulub crater in Mexico might not have released as much gas as previously thought. Of course, it still had other devastating effects. It kicked up clouds of dust that dimmed sunlight and caused a rapid drop in temperature. It also caused a massive tsunami and made the climate situation worse. However, there's a chance that the extinction itself happened because of the volcanoes and the asteroid was just hammering a nail, although it's not fully confirmed yet. Whatever the reason was, the Cretaceous period ended and these incredible beings disappeared from Earth forever. 80% of the world's plants and animals were gone forever, not individuals, but entire species. Since the extinction of pterosaurs, the largest flying animals have been much smaller, so there's a chance that we're missing a link in our fossil records. Maybe one day we'll find it and reshape our understanding of bird evolution. What do Paris Hilton and Chris Hemsworth have in common? Well, apparently, they both want to bring animals back to life. But we're not talking about making your favorite pet live forever. Nope. These celebs are actually helping a science company bring back animals that no longer exist, like the mammoth, the Tasmanian tiger, and even the iconic dodo. If everything goes according to plan, these fascinating creatures could be walking among us again by 2028. This groundbreaking effort is led by a company called Colossal Biosciences. At this very moment, they're working on a way to revive the core genes of animals that disappeared from Earth ages ago. The idea is to replicate those genes using DNA from a close living relative. If that's all Greek to you, don't worry. We'll break it down a bit later. So, the mammoth is one of the animals they plan to bring back, and people are especially hyped about it. These incredible, massive creatures roamed parts of Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America until about 4,000 years ago. Some people might mix them up with modern elephants, but there are some key differences. For starters, they had huge curved tusks that curled inward and were used to dig for food. They also adapted to survive in freezing climates, like having 2 layers of thick fur to keep their blood warm. But mammoths and elephants do have a lot in common. The woolly mammoth shares 99.5% of its genes with its closest relative, the Asian elephant. That's huge because it means that mammoths are genetically closer to Asian elephants than Asian elephants are to African elephants, for example. The company's bold plan is to create a living, walking elephant-mammoth hybrid that looks just like the ones that used to roam the planet. This animal will look like, walk like, and even sound like a woolly mammoth, but most importantly, it'll be able to live in the same ecosystem that the mammoth left behind. If the scientists succeed in bringing back enough of these creatures, one of their big goals is to help restore the Arctic tundra ecosystem. But how do they actually plan to create the mammoth? Here's their plan. First, they need to find well-preserved samples of woolly mammoths in places like Alaska, for example. Then they'll need to sequence the mammoth's genome and the genome of its closest relative, the Asian elephant. The next step is to identify the important genes that made the woolly mammoth perfectly adapted to cold temperatures, like its shaggy hair, curved tusks, and dome-shaped cranium. In other words, they need to identify which genes make the mammoth, well, the mammoth. Now comes the interesting part. They will use top-notch gene editing tools, kind of like scissors, to cut the Asian elephant DNA and replace those spots with the mammoth sequence. This will allow them to create a new cell line and, later, an embryo. This embryo will grow inside a healthy female Asian elephant, who will be the surrogate. And just like that, a new, cold-adapted elephant will be born. Or at least, that's what scientists hope. Specialists predict that this Mammoth 2.0 could be on Earth as early as 2028. The reason it will take a while is that their gestation period is around 22 months. But if that deadline feels too far for you, there is actually a chance we could get a surprise a lot sooner. That's because some of the other animals they plan to revive have a much shorter gestation period, like Australia's thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger. The company is also doing whatever it takes to give this animal a second shot at life. And the good news is that the process seems to be well advanced. Recently, the group announced that the Tasmanian tiger's genome is about 99% complete. This animal was native to the Australian mainland and the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. A big part of the Tasmanian tiger population disappeared over 3,000 years ago. But about 5,000 of them kept roaming around until pretty recently. It's believed that the last thylacine passed away in 1936. To revive the Tasmanian tiger, scientists first need a sample of the ancient animal. So they took RNA molecules from a 110-year-old preserved head that had been kept in ethanol. The team was really lucky because it's rare to find old samples that are so well preserved, allowing scientists to use advanced DNA analysis techniques. And by that, I mean they did a full, complete analysis. By studying RNA samples from important tissue areas like the tongue, nasal cavity, brain, and eyes, experts were able to learn a bunch of interesting things about the Tasmanian tiger. They could figure out how its brain worked, and also what this beast could smell, see, and taste. By the way, these semi-nocturnal animals had a special appetite for small rodents, lizards, and birds. After finding the perfect sample, the process of reviving it will be pretty much the same as with the mammoth, but with an elephant as a DNA donor, of course. In the case of the Tasmanian tiger, its closest living relative is a small marsupial called the fat-tailed dunnart. Even though this animal is small, it is a ferocious carnivore. so experts believe the whole DNA editing process will work just fine with its sequence. Their goal is to turn a fat-tailed Dunart cell into a thylacine cell. To accomplish that, they did more than 300 unique genetic changes into a Dunart cell, so there is no doubt they're pushing all the boundaries to make the dream of reviving animals a reality. This project also plans to revive the iconic dodo. You know, that funny-looking bird from the paradisiacal island of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean? And here, things get a little trickier, since we don't know much about this creature, which has origins that go back about 23 million years. Basically, the only clues we have about what dodos looked like when they were alive come from a handful of drawings, paintings, and written descriptions from the 17th century. But since those pictures are all pretty different from each other, and only a few of them were based on real, live dodos, we're still not 100% sure what they actually looked like. And as for how they behaved, well, we don't know much about that either. That's why reviving this long-absent legend will be super interesting and really enlightening. The sample they used to extract an old dodo genome came from a skull in the collection of the Natural History Museum of Denmark. And the dodo's closest living relative, which will provide the host cells, is the Nicobar pigeon, a gray bird with colorful features found in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in India. If everything goes smoothly, in a couple of years we might see the fabulous and iconic dodo with our own eyes. Reviving animals might sound impossible, but science and technology together can be a real game changer, not only by protecting today's animals, but also by restoring species that disappeared from the planet long ago. Actually, we've already pulled this off. A wild goat called the bucardo, also known as the Pyrenean ibex, went extinct in the year 2000. But 3 years later, scientists managed to bring it back to life, using a method pretty similar to what we've talked about in this video. It took 57 tries, but one of them finally worked, and a bucardo clone was born. Unfortunately, the animal only lived for 10 minutes. You might think that wasn't a success, but it was actually a huge step forward in the whole animal revival field. Now, specialists can only hope the project to bring back the dodo, the mammoth, and the Tasmanian tiger go a bit better. When we look at creatures in the animal kingdom, we often have the following thought. If they have similar traits, they must be related somehow. Zebras, horses, and camels must have some common ancestor. Same goes for dogs and jackals. Somewhere back in their lineage, they must have some common great-great-great-grand wolf, right? Well, the way evolution works in nature is way more complex. Take, for instance, convergent evolution, which is when different creatures evolve independently from each other but end up having similar traits. We only need to look at sharks and dolphins to see how this works. At first glance, they look very similar, aquatic creatures with some species having roughly the same size. But turns out they're mostly unrelated. Sharks are fish. They reproduce by laying eggs and evolved to have the ability to sniff out blood in the water to feed themselves. Dolphins, on the other hand, are mammals. They're friendly and have a way more interesting social life. Take bottlenose dolphins, which have their own special whistles that they use similar to how humans use their names. Not only do they develop this type of whistle to introduce themselves to other dolphins, but they can also learn such names so they can better communicate with each other. Sure, sharks and dolphins did have a common ancestor, but this one lived in the sea almost 300 million years ago. It's safe to say, dolphins and sharks aren't even cousins these days. Another more shocking example of convergent evolution is that of whales and bats. Most of the creatures we can name on the top of our heads use light and sight to understand the world around them. But there is a specific set of creatures that relies on sound to paint them a picture of their environment. What they do is they emit a sound which bounces back to them depending on the object it hits. This ability is called echolocation. Animals that have this feature emit sounds at frequencies above human hearing, called ultrasound. Those sound waves bounce off objects while they move around, allowing them to figure out where they are in a certain space. Echolocation is mostly used by toothed whales and by some species of bats. What's similar in both of these animals is that they need to hunt in the darkness. Despite this, they echolocate in very different ways. Bats, for instance, use their throats to generate ultrasound from their mouth or nose. Then, they proceed to listen for changes in the echoes. Their echolocation is so finely tuned that they can distinguish targets less than 0.01 inches apart, even if their target is moving. Whales, on the other hand, echolocate by pushing air through their nasal cavity. This movement creates vibrations in a special fatty organ called the melon. This organ focuses and modulates the sound, which then passes into the water around the whale. Whales then pick up the reflections of these sounds through their lower jaw and around the ears. Another striking example of evolutionary convergence is that of Ichthyosaurus and dolphins. Visually, the Mesozoic fish lizards named Ichthyosaurus seem very similar to modern dolphins. But the friendly mammals are much more related to giraffes and camels than the ancient creatures. Despite being 200 million years apart, they do share some common traits which mislead people into thinking they belong to the same species. But that's mostly because they lived in the same environment. They both evolved to feature dorsal fins, which keep them balanced while swimming. Now, let's look at Phytosaurus and crocodiles. The first ones were reptiles that roamed the Earth back in the Triassic period. They weren't dinosaurs, but they lived at the same time as the first dinosaurs did. Even though they look very similar, the first crocodiles popped up more than 70 million years later in the Cretaceous period. These two even fooled paleontologists at first. They initially assumed that phytosaurs were the ancestors of crocodiles. Placodonts and turtles look similar too. Placodonts, however, appeared about the same time as the dinosaurs did, somewhere around 235 million years ago. Like modern turtles, they lived in marine environments, but they were surrounded by predators. So, they evolved to have really strong shells to protect themselves. Turtles, however, made it to the scene around 100 million years later. Even modern cats have ancient lookalikes. They were called the Sparacidons, but they were carnivores and marsupials. They used to live in the South American area and resembled the saber-toothed tiger, which is now extinct. Speaking of saber-toothed tigers, how about one that's also related to the kangaroo? Yeah, this creature used to freely roam the Earth around 300 million years ago. The Thylacostomus may have looked like a feline, but it was a marsupial, meaning it had a pouch of skin in which it carried its pups for a certain period after their birth, like kangaroos and opossums do today. It's difficult to estimate what they looked like since a full skeleton has never been found, but we do know they weighed between 180 to 260 pounds. When we picture a present-day elephant, we always imagine them with their tusks protruding upwards. Well, that's not how their ancestors did it. About 20 million years ago, there lived a prehistoric elephant-like creature named Deinotherium. It did, however, have both tusks curving down from their jaw. As with many other prehistoric creatures, we don't know why they had this feature the other way around. But one theory suggests they used them as anchors. By securing themselves to riverbanks, they were able to safely sleep without drifting off. The last thylacine passed away in the early 20th century. Their extinction was one of the most tragic natural events in modern times. For the last 2,000 years, they have been known to live only on the island of Tasmania. Despite the name, they looked more like foxes than felines. However, thylacines were marsupials rather than placental mammals like foxes. The two-lake wallaby was one of the most beautiful and majestic creatures ever to have lived. It used to be found in Australia and New Zealand. They were very similar to the kangaroos and featured fine fur with shifting bands of darker and lighter gray across their backs. Surprisingly, they were dubbed monkey face, but they had no connection whatsoever to modern monkeys, apart from both being mammals. What made them so special was the way they moved around. Their standard movement consisted of 2 short hops, followed by a long one. After that, the wallaby would simply stare into the sky. Don't be fooled though, the 2-legged wallaby was extremely rapid. Females were generally taller than males, and they appear to have been quite sociable animals, at times being particularly fond of a certain location. They were also nocturnal. Hyracoodonts and horses share a lot of similar features, but hyracoodonts used to exist in the Eocene and Oligocene periods, and they went extinct around 23 million years ago. In their whole group, they featured very diverse species and came in many different sizes, from the small pony-like to the colossal Paraceratherium, which is one of the largest land-living mammals ever to exist. Modern horses, however, appeared around 2 million years ago. Let's do a little experiment together. Start by stretching your arms out. If you were to draw a line from your fingertips to your shoulder, it would measure around 28 inches. Now, try to picture an insect with a wingspan this big. Hold on a minute, you won't need a large can of bug spray, don't worry. They're extinct. But the gigantic Meganeuropsis did live around 250 to 300 million years ago. However, they most likely resembled the present-day dragonflies, despite not being technically related. Scientists figured out that they were not true dragonflies because of differences in the shape of their wing veins. Scientists still don't know why these bugs turned out so big. Some believe insects are limited in size because of the small quantity of oxygen they're able to take in. In the times when these insects roamed the Earth, the levels of oxygen in our atmosphere were much higher, so that might be one explanation. Other specialists think that they got so big because there wasn't any other predator large enough to pick them up from the ground. If there were a profession of evolutionary or nature detective, the first thing such detectives would do is investigate the mystery of anteaters. For some reason, after dinosaurs, different species of mammals evolved to feed on ants. And such mammals appeared at least 12 times. While investigating these mysteries, you will learn about new properties of evolution that will also understand what anteaters, pets, and crabs have in common. What? Yep, crabs play an important role in this detective story. So, scientists have recently conducted a large-scale study and found out that over the past 66 million years, different mammals have chosen a lifestyle where they only eat ants. At least 12 separate evolutionary lineages of mammals have adapted to this diet. From the point of view of evolution, there is a logic here. Ants are very nutritious. Most species of ants are harmless and non-venomous. They don't harm anyone and are constantly multiplying. They are an unlimited supply of nutrients. By the way, according to research, the total number of ants is about 20 quadrillion. 1 quadrillion is 1 million billion. Can you imagine that? And the total biomass of these ants is 12 megatons. 1 megaton contains 1 million tons. If you weigh all the wild animals and birds on Earth, their combined weight will be less than the total mass of ants. This weight is 20% of the biomass of all humankind. But that wasn't always like that. After dinosaurs disappeared, the proportion of ants was less than 1% of the total insect population. But their numbers increased sharply to about 23 million years ago at the beginning of the period known as the Miocene. More and more animals include ants in their diet. Science calls feeding exclusively on ants obligate myrmecophagy. In addition to their nutritional properties and almost unlimited numbers, ants are easy to get. It's enough to have certain body features like elongated skulls and tongues. And evolution gives mammals these features. Their teeth often get reduced. That is, they decrease in number and size. They often have strong claws and strong forelimbs, which allow them to dig insect nests. Also, Some animals united by their love for ants have lower body temperature and slow metabolism. And what's so special about ants? It's a food rich in protein and fat. They're small, but there are a lot of them, and animals probably feel sated after such a dinner. So, eating ants is like a cheat code for survival in the natural world, which few species know about yet. To discover this phenomenon, scientists conducted a review of more than 600 scientific sources and compiled a database on the eating habits of almost 5,000 species of mammals. Then, they divided these species into 5 categories depending on their diet. Here they are: obligate myrmecophagies, carnivores, insectivores, herbivores, and omnivores. After that, biologists placed these categories on the family tree of animals to trace how their eating habits were formed over tens of millions of years. It sounds like a lot of painstaking work. It's worth paying respect to the scientists who are so eager to study our planet. So they noticed that myrmecophagy appeared on the entire tree at least 12 times. It included some animals such as echidnas, pangolins, aardvarks, anteaters, and numbats. And all these animals were in 3 different groups of mammals: eutherians, marsupials, and monotremes. Among those belonging to the first group, there are wolves. Kangaroos belong to the second group, and platypuses go to the third group. And some animals from these groups began to eat ants. And you know what this strange thing is called? Convergence. Convergent evolution is when completely different animal species have common physiological traits that help them solve similar problems and adapt to similar conditions. The opposite process is called divergence. This is when 2 creatures that share a common ancestor become less and less alike over time. For example, a white bear and a gray bear. Their habitats are different, so they've got different features. The white bear became carnivorous. The brown bear is an omnivore. Their sizes and coat colors are different. In addition, the white bear has unique paws that allow it to move on the ice. Convergent evolution is when a bat, a butterfly, and a bird have different ancestors, but in the process of evolution, they all developed wings. The most important thing is that some of you can watch convergent evolution right now at home. Look at pugs and Persian cats. Do you see any similarities? 2 different animals, a cat and a dog. But why did they suddenly become so similar? Flattened skull shape, slightly similar eyes. They got the same features under similar living conditions. And these conditions are our homes and apartments, and our selfish desire to make animals cute. The appearance of pugs and Persian cats is a result of selective breeding made by humans. That's why it's called artificial convergence. Unfortunately, this leads to big health problems in these poor pets. Scientists have scanned about 2,000 skulls of cats and dogs and found similarities in the shape of the skull. So, who knows? Maybe in a couple of million years or earlier, we won't distinguish a domestic cat from a dog at all. Another striking example of convergent evolution is crabs. Yes, for many evolutionary biologists, they're some of the most amazing and complicated creatures on Earth. But what's so complicated about them? They confuse scientists. It seems to you that all crabs are the same, but they represent different groups. That is, some crabs are real crabs and some crabs are not crabs. Okay, this is a little confusing. For example, true crabs are swimmer crabs, mud crabs, and some others. Shell-shy and hermit crabs are so-called false crabs. But what's the difference? They differ in size, but outwardly, they look almost the same. Claws, eyes, walk. The difference is in the legs. True crabs have 4 pairs of long legs, while false crabs have 3 pairs and 1 small pair at the back. Yes, they have a flat, hard shell and bent tails, but their common ancestor didn't have these features. Moreover, over the past 250 million years, evolution has changed the structure and appearance of crabs several times. That is, different creatures, independently of each other, grew this unusual shell. It looks like there's a sample of an ideal shell for living in certain places with water. And different animals get this sample on their backs. And the shell is not the only thing. Scientists have come up with a term that stands for crabinization. It's carcinization. When an animal loses its crab-like form during evolution, it's called decarcinization. Considering all this stuff, a question arises. In the case of anteaters, it's clear why some mammals have elongated muzzles, strong front paws, and long claws. It's easier to get ants with these features. But why has nature made many animals look like crabs? What is the evolutionary advantage of the crab shape? Scientists have several ideas. Carcinization gives animals a hard, calcified shell that protects them from enemies. Walking sideways allows them to be agile and fast. Moving this way, they don't lose sight of the enemy that's chasing them. But there are exceptions here. Spider crabs walk straight, and hermit crabs, which are not real crabs and are not carcinized, walk sideways. Scientists don't have a clear picture and can't name the exact reason for carcinization. But the more genomic information about these creatures we have, the closer scientists are to getting the answer. But why is all this necessary? Well, if researchers can track the evolution of crabs, they will have a timeline of 250 million years. Scientists will be able to understand which environmental factors cause animals to acquire the features of crabs, and which factors take these features away. And most interestingly, scientists will be able to understand which animals will become crabs during convergent evolution. Let's consider whether something similar could happen to the human species. In fact, convergent evolution also touches us. Depending on temperature, atmospheric pressure, and many other factors, people develop different features. For example, residents of high-altitude areas with low oxygen levels have voluminous lungs.
Poison dart frogs are one of the most toxic species on our planet. They come in a range of bright colors: blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And that's not just to show off. It's a kind of message to all the predators that might want to come after them. I'm toxic, so you better stay away and don't try to eat me. The golden poison dart frog, for example, has so much poison it could finish 20,000 mice. Vibrant colors in nature are generally a sign it's better to stay away from that animal, because it's a warning you're looking at something you definitely don't want to eat. Check a blue ring octopus, another extremely venomous creature. Unlike poison dart frogs or, for example, velvet ants, whose bright colors you see right away, this octopus shows its blue rings only when it feels threatened. With over 300 pounds and 10 feet in length, Komodo dragons are the heaviest lizards on our planet. They will go after almost anything that comes their way, including pigs, deer, smaller dragons, and even more challenging creatures, like big water buffalo. They camouflage and patiently wait for their prey to come closer, lying in the grass. Saltwater crocodiles. Their attacks are more frequent than those of sharks. They have a 3.5 times stronger bite than a lion and 25 times stronger bite than people do. One more superpower: these guys can literally launch their bodies out of water, and they do that with their tails. Hippos seem quite relaxed as they chill in the water, but they're actually pretty aggressive. They attack humans even more than leopards and lions. This guy is small, but it can be as threatening as a huge hippo. Meet the tsetse fly. It lives in sub-Saharan Africa, and travelers that love spending their time outdoors or in game parks should be careful about these insects. It's important to get the right treatment as soon as possible if it bites you. Pus caterpillars look all innocent and fluffy, but you'd better avoid touching them. They're venomous, and these wig-like hairs you see are actually spines that can cause multiple issues if you touch them. Ouch! Vespa mandarinia mostly build their nests underground, so it's trickier to find them. Their sting is like someone pierced you with a hot metal pin. The stinger is long enough to even go through the standard protective beekeeper's gear. The reef stonefish is the world's most venomous fish. There are 13 stout spines in its dorsal fin, and that's how this animal injects its highly toxic venom. Lions. They live mostly in Africa and can eat a quarter of their body weight, about 88 pounds. in a single meal. They mostly hunt at night and during storms because the wind and noise make it harder for their prey to hear and see them. Why hunt if they can just go and participate in some burger eating contest? Tigers mostly inhabit Asia. They're able to survive in different conditions since you can find them in various areas, from mountains to rainforests. As long as they have enough water, food, and cover, they can adapt to anything. Food can sometimes be a problem since they eat up to 60 big animals per year, with smaller ones as snacks in between. Fun fact, their skin is covered in stripes too, not just their fur. A bit of good news here. Wolves aren't really into eating humans. Still, sometimes they do go after people. They mostly attack when they don't have enough food or when they lose their habitat. Sharks have a bad reputation, but they mostly spend their time away from humans, catching smaller fish and other marine animals. Still, they'll defend themselves if you come to their area and they feel threatened. And in that case, their serrated teeth certainly don't look too peaceful. Ostrich may not belong to that list at first sight, but when it's cornered, this animal is perfectly capable of taking down big predators such as wolves and lions. Yeah, sometimes they can be brave, and in reality, they never stick their head in the sand when frightened. We can't forget to mention brown or grizzly bears, which are considered to be way more aggressive than other bears. It's 3.5 times more likely something bad will happen if you encounter them than polar bears. They're also 21 times more dangerous than black bears. And yet, brown bears are the most widespread kind of bears across the globe. When it comes to snakes, saw-scaled viper is definitely one of those you need to be careful with the most, because the consequences of its bite are statistically quite sad to say the least. It has enough venom that even its weakest bite could finish 2 people. Not just saw-scaled viper, there are multiple snakes you need to stay away from. Meet Philippine cobra. It lurks in forested areas, dense jungles, low-lying plains, and open fields. It especially likes areas near water and can spit its venom up to 9.8 feet away. Black mamba too, very venomous, kinda nervous, and when it sees you as a threat, extremely aggressive. It's among the world's fastest snakes since it can move at speeds of up to 12.5 miles per hour. Australian box jellyfish is the most venomous marine animal in the world. It has tentacles covered in small darts with venom, and they can grow up to 10 feet long. Seeing even a small random spider in your home can be unpleasant. And picture if it was a Goliath bird eater instead, the largest spider in the world. And also one of the creepiest. You'll mostly find them spending their time in burrows with the entrances covered with the web. Luckily, their venom is not that bad to humans. It's like a wasp stinging you. Bad news for insects, you guys should be careful. This spider is a real danger for you. Platypus looks cute and harmless, but despite their funny appearance, they're one of the most dangerous animals in Australia. They have spurs located on their hind legs, and each of them is connected to a crural gland by a duct. And this gland creates a complex mixture of hundreds of toxins. Ugh! They have 2 layers of fur for waterproofing and insulation. With their fur, platypuses trap a layer of air right next to their skin so they can remain dry when they're underwater looking for food, which is about 12 hours a day. One of the stings you'll definitely feel the most is from the bullet ant. They're small, and their stinger is only up to 0.11 inches long, but it can still leave you with several hours of burning sensation. Pufferfish are poor swimmers, so they're most likely to end up as lunch for larger fish. But when they sense danger, they ingest big amounts of water together with air, so their body inflates like a balloon. They can puff up to even 2 to 3 times their regular size. A single pufferfish has enough toxin to finish 30 humans. The African buffalo is the only species of wild cow you'll find in Africa. You can recognize it for its heavy, rigid horns, and this, in combination with its massive size and aggressive nature, makes them very dangerous for whoever stands in its way. Elephants will respect your space most of the time, but only if you respect theirs. They can feel threatened by, let's say, a group of tourists that come too close and disrupt their personal space. In that case, they'll defend themselves and be very angry, which isn't such a nice scene. Wild dogs can be pretty dangerous, like dingoes in Australia. They can either live alone or move in packs of up to 10 animals, which can be especially tricky for their prey when the entire pack is after it. They can cross great distances and communicate with each other, howling like wolves. A star-nosed mole is certainly one of the weirdest looking creatures you'll come across. In some way, it looks like someone replaced its head with a very small octopus. They're not dangerous to humans in the way some venomous creatures or large predators are, but they can cause a lot of damage in your garden.